Noah's story didn't begin in a hospital room with congratulations and bright lights. It began in the basement of a stranger's house, beneath flickering bulbs and whispered regrets. His mother, just 17, had hidden her growing belly, beneath oversized sweaters and silence, terrified of what the world, and especially her family, would say. The labor came fast and brutal. No epidural, no nurses, just a neighbor woman who had once trained as a midwife decades ago. The girl screamed, not just from pain but from fear. She didn't want to be a mother. She didn't want him. And when it was over, she didn't hold the baby. She didn't even look at him. The child, red and squirming, let out a cry. His first protest against a world that hadn't asked for him. He was given a name, hastily scribbled on a birth certificate by someone who wasn't family. Noah Gray. No last name from the father, no welcome, just a whisper. Take him away. And so he was. He was taken in by a distant cousin of the girl's aunt, a woman named Miss Edna, who lived on the edge of town in a crumbling house with broken shutters and walls that creaked like old bones. She was a quiet woman, already past 60, and she didn't ask questions. She just fed him, rocked him, and sang old hymns in the kitchen while stirring pots of soup. There was no nursery, no toys, just a corner of the living room where a crib was pushed up against a heater and a blanket hung over the window to keep the cold out. Noah cried often. Miss Edna, with stiff fingers and tired eyes, would shuffle across the floor in slippers, murmuring lullabies to hush him back to sleep. As Noah grew, so did the questions, about his mother, about the silence, and about why Miss Edna always paused when he asked about his last name. But answers were never given. Instead, there were lessons in resilience, in reading by moonlight when the power went out, and in making something from nothing. He became the boy who fixed broken radios, who read entire encyclopedias from yard sales, and who never asked for help, because no one ever offered. At school, he was the quiet one, the one who sat in the back with secondhand clothes and patched-up shoes. Teachers noticed his intelligence, especially when he solved complex math problems in seconds or quoted lines from books he wasn't supposed to know. But other students weren't kind. They called him names: basement baby, nobody's kid, charity case. The worst part wasn't the cruelty. It was the silence that followed when he asked who he really was. Miss Edna would sigh, sometimes blink back a tear, and say, "Some questions don't need answers, Noah. You just keep walking forward." But how do you walk forward when you don't know where you came from? On his 12th birthday, Miss Edna handed him a small box wrapped in newspaper. Inside was a watch, old, scratched, but still ticking. "It belonged to your grandfather," she said. "He believed time was the only true wealth." Noah wore it every day after that. It didn't matter that he didn't know which grandfather. It mattered that someone once had owned something worth passing down: time. That was something he did have, not money, not a family name, but time, and the sharp, determined mind of someone who had learned to observe everything and speak only when it mattered. He began to spend his afternoons at the public library, devouring books on business, science, and, by the town still, at night, when the world was quiet and the house creaked like a breathing beast, Noah would stare at the ceiling and wonder, who those quesse re-a purpose a plan? Years L high school didn't change much for Noah, except that the cruelty of children sharpened with age. By the time he turned 15, he knew how to navigate the halls without making eye contact, how to shrink his presence so no one had a reason to mock him, and how to disappear into the pages of a book even when chaos reigned around him. But what he couldn't hide was his mind. It glowed, bright, brilliant. And in a school that was more focused on sports trophies than scholarship banners, that kind of brilliance wasn't celebrated. It was targeted. Noah was the kind of student who corrected teachers gently when they misquoted a source. He didn't do it out of arrogance, but curiosity. Still, that didn't matter to his classmates. Any sign of knowing more was an invitation for ridicule, and so they mocked him for his clothes, for his silence, for the way he didn't have a ride home and walked 3 miles each day, often in the rain. One boy, Chase Whitmore, heir to a local empire, threw his soda at Noah in the cafeteria once, laughing as the brown fizz soaked his worn backpack. "Looks better now," Chase had smirked. "It matches the rest of your garbage life." Laughter followed. Even the lunch monitor didn't intervene. Noah stood frozen, heart pounding, knuckles white against the tray he still held. But he didn't cry. He never cried at school. He simply picked up the tray, walked past Chase, and sat down alone, like always. But that day stuck with him, not because of the humiliation, but because of the name, Whitmore's. He'd heard it before, in whispers, in headlines, in the background of news segments about big donations and business expansions. The Whitmores owned half the town, from commercial real estate to tech startups. They were royalty, and Chase Whitmore was their golden son, confident, entitled, untouchable. Noah didn't sleep that night. Instead, he went to the library the next morning and began digging. He didn't start with Chase. He started with the family, Jonathan. Whitmore, Chase's father, was the CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, multiple subsidiaries, billions in revenue, a wife named Camille. A carefully curated image, but the deeper Noah searched, the more questions he found. There was a mention of a daughter, Amelia Whitmore, who had vanished from the public eye at 17. No graduation photos, no wedding announcements, just silence. 17. That number thudded in Noah's head like a heartbeat. That's how old his mother had been. Could it be? He shook the thought away at first. It was too wild, too cinematic. But something kept pulling him back. Every free minute that week he returned to the archives. He read local gossip columns, school records, even forum posts. It was there, on a forgotten web forum for former students of Lincoln High, that he found a blurry yearbook photo tagged Amelia Whitmore, 2005, vanished after junior year. Rumors of pregnancy. Family shut it down hard. Noah stared at the screen. A 17-year-old girl disappears, around the same time he was born. The timelines aligned. Too well. He printed the photo and took it home. Miss Edna was stirring stew in the kitchen when he showed it to her. She glanced at the photo once, and her ladle paused mid-stir. "Where did you find this?" she asked quietly. "Library," he said. "Her name's Amelia Whitmore. She disappeared when she was 17. Miss Edna set the ladle down. Her shoulders slumped. "Noah," she began, but her voice broke. "You know, don't you?" He pressed. "She's my mother." Miss Edna closed her eyes. For a long moment, she didn't speak. When she opened them again, they shimmered with unshed tears. "I wasn't supposed to tell you," she whispered. "But yes, she's your mother." The air felt heavy, like the room had tilted sideways. "Why didn't she want me?" he asked. Voice small. She was scared. Her family is powerful. Cold. When they found out, they wanted it erased. She had no say. They hid her away, sent her off. Then they paid me to keep quiet and raise you. Did she ever try to see me? Miss Edna shook her head. Not once. Noah said nothing. He took the photo and walked to his room. That night he stared at the ceiling again, just like when he was younger. But now he knew the names. He knew who had thrown him away. The Whitmores. They had money, power, respect, and no shame in casting off a child like he was a stain on their legacy. But that wouldn't be the end of his story. It would be the beginning. At school the next week, Noah didn't shrink away. He walked taller. He studied harder. He pushed himself past every limit. Chase Whitmore still mocked him, but Noah didn't flinch anymore. Because now every insult was fuel, every laugh was a spark. And deep inside, a fire had started. He made a list, not of revenge, but of goals. Get out of this town, learn everything about business, law, and finance. Build something bigger than the Whitmores ever imagined. Face them, not as a forgotten mistake, but as their reckoning. He didn't tell anyone, not Miss Edna, not the librarians, not the teachers. But every step he took from that day forward carried purpose. By 17, he had maxed out all the public library's business books. By 18, He won a national entrepreneurship competition. With a business plan for a startup no one believed he could run. But he did. He got a full-ride scholarship to a top-tier university on the East Coast. Not Ivy League. He didn't care for prestige. He cared for proximity to power. He left town quietly. Miss Edna hugged him at the bus station, her eyes filled with pride and sorrow. "You're going to change the world, Noah," she said. "No," he replied, holding her tightly. "I'm going to change mine." As the bus pulled away, he looked out the window at the town that had never wanted him, the family that had erased him, and the school that had laughed at him. He smiled, just a little, because they had all made a mistake, and someday that mistake would sign their fate. University life gave Noah everything high school never could: anonymity, opportunity, and space to grow. He wasn't the poor kid anymore. He was just another student with a backpack full of dreams and a scholarship that paid for every textbook and meal plan. He dove into his studies like a man starved. Business strategy, corporate law, psychology, finance. Every lecture was a brick in the empire he was quietly planning. Professors noticed him. Some offered internships. Others invited him to roundtable discussions meant for graduate students. Noah said yes to everything. He read late into the night. He shadowed entrepreneurs. He even started a small app development company with 2 classmates, which generated enough income to fund weekend trips to networking events. And that was where it happened. The first real glimpse. At a business leadership summit in Manhattan, Noah found himself seated in a sea of suits and silk ties. The keynote speaker? Jonathan Whitmore, founder and CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, the man who had erased his existence before it ever began. Noah's stomach tightened the moment the name echoed through the ballroom. He looked up from his program. The man walking to the stage was tall, commanding, with silver at his temples and a confident stride. He had the same eyes Noah saw in the mirror. The resemblance was uncanny, yet unnoticed by anyone else. Jonathan Whitmore didn't know who Noah was. Not yet. But Noah watched him closely. Every gesture, every carefully worded phrase. He spoke of legacy, innovation, and the importance of protecting what you build from internal threats. The words weren't aimed at Noah, but they might as well have been. After the speech, Noah slipped through the crowd, ignoring glasses of champagne and conversations about hedge funds. He stood near the back entrance, waiting. When Jonathan exited, flanked by 2 assistants, Noah took a step forward. Just one. The man passed within inches of him. Noah didn't speak, but he saw. He saw the weight of power, the practiced charm, the pride, and he vowed to dismantle it, brick by brick, not out of rage, but because this was the man who had treated his life like a secret shame. Back at campus, Noah dove deeper. He studied every aspect of Whitmore Enterprises. Public records, acquisition strategies, board members, media patterns, offshore holdings. He learned the company inside and out. He created a timeline. Then he created a plan. Step 1, build wealth, quietly. Step 2, build trust, publicly. Step 3, become impossible to ignore. By his junior year, Noah's company was developing enterprise-grade communication software, a niche market, secure messaging for businesses, but one with powerful demand. He restructured the startup, renamed it Graylink Systems, positioned it as a B2B firm with long-term government potential. Within a year, his software was being tested by 2 city governments. Contracts were still small, 5 figures, but the door was open. His classmates called it a miracle. His professors called it genius. Noah called it momentum. Then came the next stroke of luck, or fate. A business competition sponsored by none other than Whitmore Capital Ventures, a national pitch contest for early-stage startups. Noah applied. He used a pseudonym, Nathan Gale, and registered under a shell company. He didn't want recognition. He wanted access. The pitch round was brutal. Weeks of interviews, mock boards, due diligence, and then he made it to the finals. The last round of pitches was held in Boston. Noah entered a private conference room filled with 10 executives, including a senior VP of Whitmore Capital. He pitched with clarity, precision, and passion, explaining Graylink's technology, its encryption layers, its scalable cloud infrastructure, its civic applications. The room was silent when he finished. Then came applause. They offered him a deal. Not equity, not yet, but a strategic mentorship contract, access to networking, capital introductions, and future opportunities. All under NDA. Noah signed, and just like that, he was inside the system. He never let them know who he really was. He played the role of the eager founder, humble and brilliant. He took every resource, every contact, and used it to strengthen Graylink. He hired quietly, grew the team, opened a small office in Brooklyn, and then, while Whitmore Capital focused elsewhere, Noah began buying tiny stocks, minor shares, mostly forgotten holdings, small pieces of a much larger puzzle. Subsidiaries of Whitmore Enterprises had spun off divisions years earlier to hide risk. Noah traced them all. One had 3.7% of voting stock. Another had 2.1%. A dormant holding firm had 1.9%. It was tedious, meticulous, but by the end of that year, he controlled just over 11% of Whitmore Enterprises through 6 different entities, still invisible, still silent. At night, he kept a photo of Amelia Whitmore in his desk drawer. The, one from high school. The one that started it all. He didn't hate her, not anymore, but he didn't forgive her either. She had chosen silence. She had chosen the comfort of her family over the truth of his existence. They all had. Noah wasn't looking for revenge. He was looking for reckoning, and he was almost ready. Then something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while reviewing potential acquisition targets, Noah noticed a failing startup, Brightmark AI, on the verge of bankruptcy. Its tech was sloppy, but its patents were powerful. And more importantly, one of its top investors, Camille Whitmore, Jonathan's wife, Amelia's mother, his grandmother. The company had less than 2 weeks of runway left. Noah bought it outright. Through a proxy, no one noticed. The headlines the next day read, "Unknown firm acquires Brightmark AI in quiet deal." Camille Whitmore lost over $1.8 million in the sale. Noah smiled. He wasn't cruel, but he was calculated. This was just the beginning. His hands didn't shake anymore when he read the name Whitmore. They itched to sign, to strike, to stand before them not as a ghost, but as a storm. Power, Noah had learned, wasn't always about money or position. Sometimes power came from the people who understood how the system truly worked. The ones who pulled strings quietly, off stage, while others performed in the spotlight. Noah met one of those people in the unlikeliest of places, a forgotten law library tucked behind a campus building most students never entered. He had been researching corporate liability loopholes when an older man with sharp eyes and an even sharper tone offered unsolicited commentary. "You're quoting subsection B, but if you really want to win in court, look at D. Most people don't even notice it." Noah turned. The man looked like a retired judge. Tailored coat, white hair, a cane he barely used. "Thanks," Noah said, cautious. "I'm not helping you," the man replied. "I'm testing you." And that was how Noah met Mr. Greaves, the ghost of Wall Street, some whispered. A man who had advised CEOs, outmaneuvered entire boards, and vanished after a scandal no one could quite pin on him. Greaves never told Noah his full story, but the stories others told were enough. He had built fortunes and destroyed reputations. And now, for reasons Noah never fully understood, he had taken an interest in him. They met weekly, sometimes over coffee, sometimes in empty lecture halls. Greaves taught him more than any textbook ever could. Not just the law, but the reading between the lines. The fine print no one questioned. The human instincts of risk and fear and pride that governed even the smartest boardrooms. Power is perception, Greaves said once. If they think you're a threat, you are. If they think you're weak, even your brilliance won't save you. Noah took notes on everything, mental ones mostly. He began dressing differently, speaking more deliberately, studying the weaknesses not just of companies, but of the people who ran them. And with each lesson, his plans evolved. Greaves also taught him how to build structures, real structures, shell companies, holding firms, trusts, invisible bridges, between assets and intentions, legal, smart, quiet. No one gets rich alone, Greaves warned. But the ones who stay rich make damn sure no one knows how they did it. Noah applied every lesson. By the time he graduated, Graylink had contracts in 4 states and was negotiating with a defense subcontractor. His net worth had crossed 7 figures, though on paper he owned almost nothing. Everything he had built was protected, layered, and shielded behind legal veils. But none of that changed his hunger. He still woke up thinking about them. The family who never claimed him. The company whose legacy he was born to stain. The name, Whitmore's, that echoed louder now in the business world than ever before. They were preparing for expansion, a merger with a European logistics firm, stock prices rising, media praising. Their long-term vision. Noah read every article, not with admiration, but calculation. He knew what they didn't. Their infrastructure was brittle. Not on the surface, but underneath, in outdated logistics models, in executive overreach, in vulnerable voting shares that no one had tried to consolidate. Yet, he began acquiring more, piece by piece. Every 0.2%, every minor stake sold off in silent desperation by someone who needed liquidity, Noah was there to catch. Through one of his firms, he hired analysts to build predictive models of Whitmore stock behavior. Through another, he created a whisper campaign of slight concern, just enough to slow investor confidence and drive weak hands to sell. He was still invisible, but growing. Then, Greaves threw him a challenge. "You've been playing in shadows," he said. "Time to test the sunlight." Noah raised an eyebrow. "There's an executive retreat," Greaves explained. "Private, invitation only, real players only. I can get you in, as my legacy candidate. Show up, observe, speak. Once, make it count." The event was held in Aspen. Noah arrived with a tailored suit, a cold stare, and a name no one recognized. The guest list read like a Forbes index: CEOs, financiers, old money, new tech. Power dripped from every handshake. He kept quiet at first, listened until, one night over bourbon and snow, a debate began about the future of automation and ethics. Noah couldn't resist. He stepped in, articulated a strategy so sharp and original that the entire room went quiet. An oil magnate laughed. "Who is this kid?" Greaves only smiled. "My successor." That night, 3 offers arrived in his inbox. Advisory positions, venture capital, meetings, a private dinner with a retail giant. Noah accepted none. He had bigger prey. But what he gained was visibility, and from there, he took the final steps. He created a new firm, NG Holdings, initials that meant nothing to anyone but him. Operated internationally, invested in renewable tech, bought into biotech, positioned itself as the kind of forward-thinking capital firm Whitmore Enterprises couldn't afford to ignore, and they didn't. Within 6 months, Whitmore reached out for a partnership conversation. Noah didn't go to the meeting. He sent an executive proxy. The dance had begun. Behind the scenes, he built a coalition, other minor stakeholders, former executives, anyone with a chip on their shoulder and shares to offer. He didn't make enemies. He made assets. People trusted him because he wasn't brash. He was composed, visionary, efficient. The kind of man Jonathan Whitmore would have liked if he hadn't been his greatest mistake. One night, after reviewing another silent acquisition, Noah looked up at the skyline from his penthouse and asked aloud, "How does it feel, Whitmore, knowing the sun you erased now owns your shadow?" He poured a drink and made a toast to the storm to come. The first time Noah saw his name in the Wall Street Journal, it wasn't as the CEO of Graylink or the founder of NG Holdings. It was in a small footnote attached to a legal case that reshaped the interpretation of competitive non-compete clauses. He hadn't meant to start a legal war, but when a multi-million-dollar tech firm tried to bury a startup he'd invested in with a predatory lawsuit, Noah stepped in. not as a silent partner, but as their defense architect. The courtroom battle lasted 3 months. The case, Vanguard versus LinQ Security, became headline news when Noah, only 21, stood up to corporate Goliaths and won. He'd found a loophole buried deep in an outdated state statute and used it to invalidate the foundation of the plaintiff's case. When the ruling was announced in favor of LinQ, the courtroom buzzed with disbelief, but Noah didn't celebrate. He walked out calmly, coat over his shoulder, the same as he walked in, because for him, it wasn't the victory that mattered, it was the message. The world began to take notice. Young investor breaks legal ground. A new mind in tech law emerges. Greylinks. Mysterious founder enters the spotlight. Noah gave no interviews. He declined all invitations to panels, conferences, and expos. The more people wanted to see him, the more he remained elusive. And in that silence, his legend grew. But behind the scenes, he moved quickly. Vanguard's stocks dropped 8% in a week. Noah, through a dormant holding firm in Delaware, bought 2% of their company on the dip and sold it a month later when prices bounced back. Profit, $3.2 million. It was his first personal gain from public perception manipulation, and it would not be his last. The victory also opened new doors: government contracts, university collaborations, former adversaries seeking partnerships. Still, Noah's eyes were on only one target: Whitmore Enterprises. He watched as the company grew increasingly dependent on external capital to support Omar's bloated expansion plan. A European logistics deal had stretched their cash flow, and market conditions were tightening. Their debt ratio climbed. That's when Noah made his first indirect approach. Through NG Holdings, he offered to buy into a Whitmore subdivision, a struggling tech branch focused on transport automation. The offer was generous, strategic, appealing. Jonathan. Whitmore declined personally. The message returned was simple: we do not collaborate with unproven entities. Noah smiled when he read the email. He didn't want entry. He wanted denial, and he wanted it documented. Within 72 hours, he leaked the rejection to industry blogs. Headline: Whitmore turns down tech savior amid financial decline. Subheadline: Is legacy pride undermining Whitmore's future? The reaction was swift. Investors questioned the decision. Stock analysts downgraded Whitmore from strong buy to hold. Noah waited. 2 weeks later, the company announced a cost-cutting plan. They shuttered 3 regional offices and reduced staff. By 11%, it wasn't collapse. Not yet, but it was movement. And in chaos, Noah thrived. He began a new campaign, subtle, almost imperceptible. He funded think pieces questioning the relevance of legacy firms in the modern era, sponsored conferences about decentralization and lean management, positioned his own portfolio as agile, adaptive, future-facing. And the contrast to Whitmore Enterprises, slow, proud, monolithic, became clear to anyone watching. Noah didn't shout. He whispered into microphones others didn't realize were live, and people listened. Meanwhile, he continued acquiring. By now, through a spiderweb of legal structures, Noah controlled nearly 17.8% of Whitmore Enterprises, without ever revealing his identity. But control wasn't enough. He wanted a seat at the table. He began preparing for the annual shareholders meeting, a dull, predictable affair attended by brokers, investors, and the press. For the first time, NG Holdings, his primary entity, requested a speaking slot. It was granted. 1 week before the event, he received a personal letter from the Whitmore legal team asking him to clarify his intentions. He didn't respond. He let them sweat. When the day came, the event was held in a polished conference center in Chicago. Rows of chairs, catered coffee, a stage with blue uplighting. Jonathan Whitmore stood at the podium, charming, confident, discussing performance and projections. Then came the shareholder Q&A. When Noah walked to the microphone, dressed in a sharp navy suit and a calm expression, no one recognized him. until he spoke. "My name is Noah Gray," he said evenly. "I represent NG Holdings, which now controls nearly 18% of this company. I have one question for the board." Murmurs rippled through the room. Jonathan froze. Why does this company continue to refuse innovation partnerships in sectors where it is clearly underperforming? Silence. No one on the board answered immediately. Then Jonathan leaned into the mic. "Our decisions are based on long-term strategic alignment and legacy vision," he said. "Legacy," Noah repeated. "Is that what you call rejecting a proven firm that offered to save one of your failing divisions?" Gasps. Someone in the front row coughed. Noah stepped back. "I yield my time," he said, and sat down. The moment went viral. Clips circulated. Unknown shareholder calls out Whitmore. Leadership. Noah Gray, the prodigy behind NG Holdings, emerges. 3 days later, Whitmore's stock dropped 5%. Noah didn't sell. He doubled down. Privately, he reached out to disillusioned board members, former execs, dissidents with small holdings. But loud opinions, he offered a path forward. "Help me reform Whitmore," he said. "We don't have to burn it. We just have to rebuild it." They listened, and slowly the tide began to shift. Noah's first victory wasn't just a courtroom win or a business deal, it was this. The moment the world, and the Whitmores, realized he wasn't a mistake in the shadows. He was a force, on their doorstep, and he was just getting started. 6 months after the shareholders' meeting, the mood at Whitmore Enterprises had shifted from confident to cautious, and then, quietly, to desperate. What had once been seen as an unstoppable legacy firm was now bleeding from internal fractures, slumping quarterly earnings, a failed European expansion, and the sudden departure of 2 senior board members. The media buzzed with questions, investors whispered in lounges, and stockholders began attending meetings with furrowed brows instead of polite smiles. At the center of it all, the Whitmore name was being redefined. No longer a symbol of untouchable success, it was now tied to resistance. Resistance to change, to adaptation, and most of all, to acknowledging the man whose influence was shaking their foundation. And yet, Jonathan Whitmore refused to yield. "He's just a kid with a few tricks," he told his executive team. "We've weathered storms worse than this." But privately, even Jonathan was unsettled, because the numbers didn't lie, and neither did the market. NG Holdings was rapidly becoming one of the most discussed names in tech, finance, and strategy. Forums, articles speculated on its mysterious rise, and rumors circulated that Noah Gray, now a verified majority owner of several mid-sized firms, was its founder and public face. Still, Jonathan tried to hold the line. He held private dinners with longtime investors. He leaned on old favors. He even brought back a retired board member to try and steady the image of the company. But the tide was turning. When Whitmore's stock dropped 12% over the course of a single month, Jonathan finally called a meeting of the family council, a rare, almost sacred gathering of bloodline stakeholders. The meeting took place in their estate's private library, a room lined with first edition books and old oil portraits. Camille Whitmore was the first to speak. "He's not going away," she said. "He's not just some vengeful investor," added one of the cousins. "He's organized, and he's winning." Jonathan stood at the fireplace, silent. Then, Emilia entered the room. The family had not seen her in person in nearly 2 years. She looked older, more tired, but there was steel in her eyes. "I want to talk to him," she said. The room went quiet. Jonathan turned sharply. "Absolutely not. He's my son," Emilia said. "Who you gave up?" Jonathan shot back. Camille rose. "Enough." The silence that followed was heavy. "He's not going to stop," Emilia continued. "And I know why. He doesn't want revenge. He wants acknowledgement. He wants to be seen." Jonathan's face tightened. "He wants control." "Maybe," Emilia said softly. "But maybe he's earned it." The conversation spiraled. Accusations, defensiveness, pride clashing with fear. In the end, no consensus was reached. But behind closed doors, Camille made a call. To NG Holdings. The assistant on the other end hesitated when she gave her name. "I'd like to request a meeting," Camille said. "A personal one, not business." "I'll relay the message," came the reply. Noah received it within the hour. He stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, "Accept, neutral location. No press." The meeting was set at a private club in Manhattan, discreet, upscale, surrounded by silence and marble. When Camille entered, she looked like the woman in his research photos. Elegant, poised, the matriarch of an empire. But up close, Noah saw the lines around her eyes. The years, the weight. "Noah," she said, voice soft. He didn't reply. They sat. "I'm not here to apologize," she said quickly. "I know that wouldn't mean much." "Then why are you here?" Noah asked. She hesitated. "Because I want to understand you," she said. "What you want. What you're really after." Noah folded his hands. "I want the truth. And I want to decide what to do with it." Camille looked down. "Your mother was scared. We were all scared. We handled it poorly. We tried to protect the family. And we erased something that should never have been erased." "Someone," Noah corrected. Camille met his gaze. "Yes. Someone." They sat in silence for a moment. Then she added, "Your grandfather built the foundation of this company. But you've shaken it in a way no one else ever has. That wasn't my goal," Noah said. "It was just the cost of being seen." She nodded slowly. "I'll speak to the board," she said. "But Jonathan won't listen to me. Not about this." "He'll listen to numbers," Noah replied, "and I'm bringing plenty." The meeting ended with no resolution, but it was a shift. The next morning, Whitmore stock saw a brief rally. Speculators assumed a private deal was being considered. Headlines called it the gray factor. Internally, panic rose again. Jonathan finally reached out, and through lawyers, he offered a meeting, private, informal. Noah declined. He sent back a single sentence: "You'll see me at the table." And then, he made his next move. He called for a special shareholders vote to appoint new board members, including one from NG Holdings. The vote would take place in 6 weeks. The media erupted. Noah Gray forces hand of Whitmore board. Son of exiled heiress demands seat at power table. Stockholders buzzed with energy. Noah toured the country meeting investors, hosting private dinners, making quiet promises, not of vengeance, but of vision. "A legacy should be built on more than silence," he said in one meeting. "It should be built on purpose." He spoke with clarity, ambition, and calm, never once raising his voice, never once mentioning his bloodline directly. But everyone knew, and slowly, the votes trickled in. Support rose. The Whitmore board watched, in horror, as their majority slipped away, and for the first time Jonathan understood. This wasn't about pride, it was about survival, and the only person who could offer it was the son he never wanted. The day of the vote arrived under cold skies and colder stares. Inside the sleek conference hall of Whitmore Tower, rows of shareholders filled leather chairs beneath crystal chandeliers. Polished men in dark suits murmured over coffee. Financial analysts updated live feeds. Journalists lined the back, ready to report what could be the most pivotal meeting in the company's century-long history. At the front, a long, curved table stood like a barrier between the board and everyone else. Behind it, Jonathan Whitmore sat centered, unmoved, composed, but his clenched jaw betrayed tension. Next to him, Camille reviewed the agenda. On her other side, 3 empty chairs were marked pending appointment. Everyone knew what was coming. Noah Gray entered without an entourage. No PR team, no lawyers flanking him. Just a calm presence in a tailored charcoal suit, his expression unreadable as he approached the microphone. A low murmur swept the room. That was him, the ghost, the prodigy, the storm in human form. He took the podium and scanned the crowd. Not with arrogance, but with something cooler: presence. Everyone looked at him. Even Jonathan couldn't look away. "Good morning," Noah said. His voice was steady, clear. Not raised, not dramatic, just exact. For over a century, this company has stood as a pillar of American industry, built on vision, fortified by power, protected by legacy. He paused. "I'm not here to tear that down. I'm here to remind you what it means." A whisper moved through the rows. "I represent over 24% of the voting bloc," he continued. "My firm has invested in your recovery, your resilience, and your reinvention." He turned slightly, meeting Jonathan's eyes. "I'm here not to break what you've built, but to finish what you refused to start." Jonathan's fingers curled around the arm of his chair. "The time for insulated leadership has passed. The time for reinvention is now. And I bring with me 3 candidates, people of innovation, strategy, integrity." He gestured toward the back, a woman in her 50s, a cybersecurity expert, a man in his 40s, former CEO of a logistics firm, and a third, a young Latina economist who had reshaped fiscal policy in 2 cities. Each stepped forward and took a seat in the pending appointment chairs. "Today," Noah said, "you decide not just who leads, but how we lead." He stepped down. The room broke into movement. Papers shuffled, phones lit up. The vote began. Behind the scenes, Jonathan was already on the phone, texting allies, calling in favors. He knew it would be close, but Noah had planned every step. Each shareholder who wavered had been met with, persuaded, or incentivized. Weeks of meetings, months of negotiations. The results came in 90 minutes later. The boardroom doors shut. Silence. Then, a verdict. All 3 of Noah's candidates were appointed. The room erupted, some with cheers, some with gasps, some with stunned silence. Noah didn't smile. He simply walked forward and shook the chairman's hand, a formality. Then he turned to Jonathan. "Would you like to step down now or wait for the audit results next quarter?" Jonathan stood slowly. "You think this is over?" Noah didn't blink. "I think this is the first honest conversation this company has had in decades." Jonathan's mouth twitched, the edge of a smile or a grimace. "You're your mother's son." Noah's voice dropped. "No, I'm your son. That's why you're losing." Jonathan said nothing. Security didn't escort him out. He left on his own. With the board restructured, Noah's team wasted no time. They announced an internal audit of all acquisitions over the past 5 years. They shut down 2 hemorrhaging subsidiaries. They replaced the PR firm, and publicly, Whitmore Enterprises, for the first time, issued a statement acknowledging a new direction. "We are proud to announce the appointment of a new strategic committee, including representation from NG Holdings. This marks the beginning of a forward-facing partnership built on innovation, inclusion, and long-term value." They didn't name Noah, but the world knew. Overnight, media outlets exploded. The prodigal shareholder, from bastard to boardroom. Noah. Gray reshapes American corporate legacy. But the true victory wasn't headlines, it was what happened next. Noah received an invitation. Not from Whitmore, from the Department of Commerce. Closed-door summit on innovation in public-private infrastructure. He was no longer the outsider. He was at the table. But he didn't forget. That night, he sat alone on his balcony, overlooking the city. In his hand, the same watch Miss Edna had given him, still ticking. He whispered to it. "They said I was a mistake, but I just rewrote their legacy." And he wasn't done yet. The restructuring of Whitmore Enterprises rippled through the business world like an aftershock. Analysts who once praised the legacy now praised the transition. NG Holdings was hailed as the vanguard of new era leadership, and Noah Gray, though still cautious with public exposure, became a symbol of disruption done right. But success came at a cost. Inside the Whitmore family, the fractures deepened. The family estate, once a place of polished luncheons and wine-fueled strategy sessions, now held silence and tension. Camille withdrew from the board. Jonathan disappeared from public life entirely. And Amelia, she reached out. Noah received her message weeks after the vote. A handwritten letter. No assistance, No email trail, just her words, penned in careful cursive. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope for understanding. I would like to speak, not as a Whitmore, as your mother. He stared at the letter for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, he went back to the town where it had all started, to Miss Edna's house. She was older now, her hands more frail, but her eyes, those soft, determined eyes, hadn't changed. You've grown into something they couldn't imagine, she said, embracing him. They still don't know how to see me, Noah replied. You're not here to be seen, she said. You're here to see. It was Edna who encouraged him to accept Amelia's invitation. It won't heal the past, she warned, but it might soften your future. The meeting took place in a quiet park, far from cameras or skyscrapers. Amelia arrived in a simple coat, her hair pulled back, no jewelry, no makeup, just her. They sat on a bench beneath an old oak tree. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Amelia said, You look just like him. Noah raised an eyebrow. Jonathan, she clarified. I suppose that's the part you kept, he said. She winced. I was 17, she whispered. I was scared. They told me you'd ruin everything. My future, the family's reputation. They took my phone, cut me off from friends. And when you were born, they didn't let me hold you. I didn't fight them. I should have. I didn't. Her voice cracked. I failed you. Noah watched her carefully. Not with hate. Just distance. I don't need you to apologize, he said. I don't even need you to explain. I just need to know something. Anything. Did you ever wonder about me? She nodded instantly. Every day, I kept your name. I tracked what little I could. I knew when you got the scholarship, when you founded Graylink. I was proud. I just never thought I had the right to reach out. You didn't, he said, gently. Until now. They sat in silence again. I don't want a relationship, Noah continued, but I won't deny you the truth. Yes, I'm your son, and yes, I became everything they feared, but not for revenge. Then why? She asked. Because I deserved to exist, he said simply, and I wanted the world to know it. Amelia nodded, tears brimming. Can I give you something? She asked. He hesitated. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small box. Inside, a silver pin, the original Whitmore crest, a symbol reserved for heirs. I don't want the name, Noah said immediately. It's not for that, she replied. It's for you, because the legacy you're building is stronger than the one they tried to protect. He took the pin, not to wear, but to remember. That night he returned to the city, and he made a decision. At the next board meeting, he announced the formation of a new division, Gray Legacy Initiatives, focused on education, innovation, and empowerment of overlooked youth. It's not philanthropy, he told the board. It's investment. In people who, like me, were never supposed to matter. The room applauded. Even those who still didn't understand him clapped, because Noah had done something rare. He had claimed power, but not to crush, to create. A week later, a journalist asked him, off the record, if he ever thought of taking the Whitmore name. Noah smiled. They tried to erase me by denying it, he said. Now I own their future without ever needing their past. And that was the truth. Noah Gray didn't need a name to build a legacy. He had become one. The media storm that followed was unlike anything Noah had experienced before. It began with a leaked photograph, Noah shaking hands with a government official at an innovation summit. The photo wasn't remarkable on its own, but someone added context, son of Amelia Whitmore. Heir of a legacy he rebuilt on his own terms. The headlines spread like wildfire. Talk shows debated it. Business columns dissected it. Social media erupted. Hashtags trended for days. Noah Gray, Yacht Legacy, disrupted, Whitmore son. At first, Noah ignored it. He had work to do, meetings, planning, board approvals. But when a reporter shoved a microphone toward him outside his building and asked, "What does it feel like to be the most famous mistake in America?" he stopped and, for the first time, he answered, "It feels like being underestimated was the most powerful advantage I've ever had." That quote was printed on the cover of Forbes the following week, under a black and white photo of Noah looking directly into the camera, calm, unapologetic, unshaken. From that moment, he couldn't avoid the spotlight. Late-night hosts made jokes. Editorials called him the Quiet Revolution. Students wrote essays on his strategy. Professors requested case studies, but Noah remained elusive. When asked for a full interview, he offered only one condition: that it be live, unedited. No. Spin It aired on a Friday evening, prime time. The interviewer was seasoned, a man known for drawing emotion out of even the coldest subjects. He started soft. Noah Gray, founder of NG Holdings, restructurer of Whitmore Enterprises, formerly unknown, now unavoidable. "How does it feel?" Noah smiled slightly. "I didn't aim for attention, I aimed for impact. The attention was just collateral." The interviewer leaned in. "Let's talk about your mother. The rumors, the documents, they all say the same thing. You were born into a family that didn't want you." Noah didn't flinch. "That's true. And now you run part of their company?" "I run the part that works." A pause. "And your father?" "He ran the part that didn't." The interviewer blinked, then changed direction. "Some say this is revenge. It's not. It's rectification. Would you sit down with him, Jonathan Whitmore?" "I already did," Noah said. At the board table, the only table that ever mattered to him. The moment stunned the audience. The interview ended with one final question. If you could say one thing to the version of yourself at 15, the boy walking home alone in the rain, what would it be? Noah thought for a long time, then said, "They're wrong about you, but someday they'll have to say your name." The interview broke viewing records. NG Holdings received 6,000 new partnership inquiries in 48 hours. And Whitmore Enterprises? Their stock rose 11%, because Noah wasn't just the story, he was the shift. In the days that followed, he traveled to schools, not as a celebrity, but as a guest speaker. He told students, "Your origin is not your limit, it's your launch point." He met with young founders from marginalized communities and began building an accelerator, not in Silicon Valley, but in forgotten industrial cities. He didn't give speeches about giving back. He called it giving forward, and through it all, he refused to change his name. Gray wasn't the family he was born into, it was the identity he built. Journalists continued to press. One posed a question at a tech expo. If the Whitmores offered to restore your place in the family, wealth, name, status, would you take it? Noah laughed. "I already have more than they ever offered, and I didn't need their name. I made it irrelevant." But beneath the headlines, the real shift was happening within the halls of Whitmore Enterprises. Board members who had once resisted now praised his foresight. New initiatives launched with his support. Profit margins rose, turnover dropped, younger talent was hired, innovation returned, and the company slowly evolved from being a legacy institution to being a symbol of reinvention. Noah didn't run every department. He didn't need to. He had already reshaped the culture, and culture, he knew, was everything. In one of his final press appearances of the year, he was asked to define legacy. He paused, then said, "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you start that others want to continue." And then, without another word, he walked away from the cameras. Because Noah Gray didn't need applause. He had built something bigger than approval. He had built permanence. For all his control, all his composure, Noah wasn't prepared for her. Her name was Elena. They met at a policy forum hosted in DC, a gathering of technologists, lawmakers, and journalists. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying to impress. She asked hard questions with a calm voice and took notes in the margins of her press pass. Her column, Beneath the Surface, was known for dissecting complexity without cruelty. Noah first noticed her because she didn't look at him like the others did, with awe or skepticism. She studied him like a puzzle, not a persona, and when she asked him during a coffee break, "What are you really trying to build?" he couldn't answer, not because he didn't know, because no one had asked him like that before. Their conversation that day lasted nearly 40 minutes, not about stock prices or strategy, but about legacy and childhood and systems built on exclusion. He didn't give her a quote, but he gave her his number. They didn't fall into a whirlwind romance. That wasn't Noah's style. It was slower, quieter. Dinners after long days, walks through Georgetown, conversations that left him thinking. Elena didn't care about Whitmore. She cared about truth, and that made her dangerous. But also, perhaps the first person who ever saw Noah not as a headline, not as a product of drama, but simply as a man. He invited her to the Gray Legacy launch in Detroit. She sat in the second row, notebook in hand, but didn't write a word. She just watched him speak. Afterward, in the quiet of the hotel rooftop, she asked, "Does it feel like it's enough?" Noah looked at the city skyline. "It never feels like enough," he said, "because the people who said I was a mistake, they still sleep soundly. They still think silence was strength." Elena stepped closer, then stopped chasing their remorse, she said, and start protecting what you've built. That night, for the first time in years, Noah didn't fall asleep with business plans on his mind. He thought about her, about what it meant to be known without needing to be feared. But love, Noah knew, came with risk. One morning, weeks later, Elena received a package at her office. Inside, photos of her and Noah, walking, laughing. A note, unsigned. "Be careful who you trust." He never stops calculating. She brought it straight to him. "I don't care where this came from," she said, "but I need to know. Am I a data point in a strategy?" Noah looked devastated. "I don't bring people into my life lightly," he said. "You weren't a calculation. You were a discovery." "Then prove it," she said. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." So he did. He told her about the night he almost walked away from all of it. When he was 18, overwhelmed, living in a basement apartment in Brooklyn with too many bills and too much ambition, he'd written a resignation letter to himself, told the mirror he wasn't enough, that the Whitmores had been right. But then he remembered Miss Edna's voice, and he kept going. Elena didn't say anything right away. She just took his hand, and that was enough. But the world wasn't quiet. Paparazzi began hounding her. Editorials questioned her integrity. One outlet claimed her relationship was a strategic romance. Elena stood firm. She wrote a column, just one, titled, "Loving the Storm." She didn't name Noah, but she described what it was to fall for. Someone forged by rejection. Someone who knew power but hadn't learned peace. Someone who never asked to be worshipped, only understood. The article went viral, but more importantly, it gave Noah something he hadn't had before. A reflection he could trust. Their relationship didn't fix him. It revealed him. In her presence, he became more than the man who signed fates. He became someone who could build futures, not just for others, but for himself. Love didn't weaken him, it anchored him. The rebuilding began not with fireworks or public declarations, but with silence. Noah stood in the main boardroom of Whitmore Enterprises, the same place where he had once confronted his past. But this time the air was different, lighter. There was no need for grand speeches. The restructuring was done, the toxic roots removed. Now came the work of replanting. He introduced flexible policies, transparency protocols, mentorship programs. Employees who once feared change now led it. Those who resisted innovation were quietly replaced. Numbers improved. But more importantly, culture shifted. Noah walked the halls without cameras. He listened, he learned, he led, and the company followed, not because it had to, but because it wanted to. He met with departments that had been neglected for years. He gave voice to engineers who had been buried under bureaucracy. He created cross-division task forces that solve problems faster than traditional committees ever had. He launched a new employee stock ownership plan. For the first time in company history, the janitor and the junior analyst both held shares. He personally introduced the policy at a town hall meeting. Ownership, he said, shouldn't be a privilege passed down, it should be a result earned. The room erupted in applause, but not everyone celebrated. On the fringes, some of the old guard still whispered, still doubted, still resented the young man who had taken what they believed should have remained untouched. One afternoon, a veteran executive approached him in the elevator. "You rewired the bones of this company," the man said. "Impressive, but you've made enemies, Gray." Noah looked him square in the eye. "Then they'll just have to get comfortable watching me win." Outside the company, reactions varied. Some in the business world lauded Noah as a visionary. Others accused him of being a symbol of dangerous disruption, a warning that legacy meant nothing in the face of media and momentum. But the metrics didn't lie. Revenue climbed. Employee satisfaction hit record highs. Turnover dropped by nearly 40%. And the public? They trusted the Whitmore name again, because it no longer stood for a family. It stood for function. Still, Noah didn't celebrate. Not publicly. He knew rebuilding wasn't an event. It was a process. One storm calmed, another always on the horizon. He created a small office called Initiatives Lab, a think tank inside the company where young minds could propose internal innovations. ITSY. First proposal: a digital dashboard where employees could track executive decisions and budget allocations in real time. Accountability shouldn't be rare, Noah said during its launch. It should be expected. He visited cities where Whitmore had failed before. He met with local leaders, apologized publicly, and reopened factories, not for show, but for strategy. Rebuilt with new management, new training programs, and local equity stakes. In one town, a former factory worker named Linda approached him after a ribbon cutting. "My father worked here 30 years, she said. "They closed it without warning. You brought it back." Noah shook her hand. "Your family helped build this country. This is just us remembering that." He didn't speak in slogans. He spoke in action, and the world noticed. He was invited to a global leadership summit in Geneva. He spoke on restorative capitalism, a term he coined that now appeared in textbooks. He didn't talk about revenge or trauma or the Whitmores. Talked about what could happen when someone without a legacy is given the chance to build one. And when he was done, the room gave a standing ovation. At night, he often returned to his office alone, not to work, just to sit. He kept a photo of Miss Edna on his desk, and next to it, a newspaper clipping from the Vanguard case. The day he first stepped out of the shadows, he never framed his Forbes cover. That wasn't the goal. The goal was this: rebuilding something that would outlive his name, outlive him. One Friday, an intern passed him in the hallway and stammered a greeting. "Mr. Gray, sir, I just wanted to say, you made me believe I belonged here." Noah stopped. He smiled. "Not wide, just enough." "You do," he said. "That's the point." And he meant it. The contract sat before him on polished glass, 15 pages that would change the trajectory of everything he had built. Noah didn't move. Outside the tower, the city pulsed. Taxis, sirens, people with places to be. But inside, the room, it was silent, air-conditioned, still. A single signature away from completing the largest merger in Whitmore Enterprises history. Across the table sat the CEO of Stratuscore International, a man whose handshake had once been headline news. But today, even he deferred to Noah Gray. Noah's lawyers waited. His board waited. The media waited. But Noah took his time. Because the pen in his hand didn't just hold ink. It held weight. It held finality. It held legacy. He flipped to the last page. His name was already printed in bold: Noah Gray, acting chairman of Whitmore Enterprises and CEO of NG Holdings. He looked up briefly and caught a reflection of himself in the black glass wall. The suit, The stillness, the quiet power. Then he set the pen down, just for a moment. "Will you excuse me?" he said. The room paused. Heads turned, brows raised, but no one objected. Noah rose, buttoned his jacket, and walked out. No fanfare, no announcement. He took the elevator down to the lobby and exited into the busy street. 1 block away, unnoticed, he entered a small coffee shop with scratched wooden tables and warm light. He ordered a black coffee, and then he sat, alone. He needed to breathe because, before he signed that paper, before he made history, he wanted to remember what it had taken to get here. He closed his eyes and saw the basement, the crib against the heater, Miss Edna singing quietly while stirring soup, the rain-soaked walks home from school, the voices that said, "Mistake," "Nobody," "Nothing." He saw the first time he learned what a holding company was, the first time he read a balance sheet, the first time he heard the name Whitmore and understood it belonged to him, yet not. And then he remembered the fear, the trembling, the decision to stand anyway, to build, to defy, to endure. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Elena. "Wherever you are right now, I hope you're proud." He smiled. Not a media smile, not a political one, just his. And in that moment, he realized something. He didn't need this merger. He didn't need any of it. He had already won, because he had become the architect of his own story. He returned to the tower 30 minutes later. The room was still waiting. He didn't apologize. He simply sat, picked up the pen, and signed. It was done. With that stroke, Whitmore Enterprises and Stratuscore International became the largest privately held tech and logistics firm on the eastern seaboard. Headlines would scream, stock prices would surge, and Noah Gray's name would be carved definitively into the business history of his nation. But none of that moved him, because as the flashbulbs exploded in the conference room next door, Noah slipped away again. This time, he didn't go to a skyscraper or a boardroom. He went to a cemetery on the outskirts of town. The grass was neatly cut. The breeze was gentle. He walked slowly to the headstone that read, Edna Langley. She gave everything to someone the world thought was nothing. He knelt, brushing dust from the stone. "I signed it," he said softly. "I made it real. I made it permanent." He placed a small silver pin beside the grave, the Whitmore crest his mother had given him. Not to honor the family that abandoned him, but to honor the woman who had raised him to survive them. "I built it," he whispered. "And it's clean. It's good. It's mine." He stood in the stillness, hands in his pockets, watching the trees sway, then turned and walked away, not as a symbol, not as a statement, but as a man who had been denied everything and had created everything in return.